fandom friends! So as you know, the Hashira Training arc for Demon Slayer, the new season, is airing on Sundays every week for 8 weeks. We have 8 episodes, and the Hashira Training arc is actually very short in the manga, so it covers part of this book and then part of book 16. And so I'm not going to be making like breakdown videos about each episode because I know a lot of people are doing that. If you want to hear my thoughts, I can give you them in the comments if you want something specific. But I thought what would be fun is breaking down the manga, the similarities and differences between this and the anime. So after watching each episode, I'm going to reread the manga, which I've read all of it, but I have not read it a second time through, so I'm a little fuzzy. So if you haven't read the manga in a long time, this is kind of gonna be kind of like a recap of showing the similarities and differences in the manga and the anime. If you have not read the manga, there will be no spoilers in this video until the very end, and I will have a spoiler warning. The spoiler that it's going to contain is something in book 18. I want to bring that to light, but if this sounds interesting to you, please stick around and I hope you enjoy. So I'm going to be starting at the beginning. So of course the first 7-ish minutes is original anime-only content of Obanai and Sanemi. Now, all of this is preparation for what's going to be shown later in the manga. It also gives us more insight on what Obanai and Sanemi are doing during this time, maybe what some of their outings look like when they're trying to defeat demons, when they're working with people below them. And so I also really loved seeing their breathing styles. I will talk about that really quick. Sanemi's breathing style reminded me of Aang's, like, you know, his ability in Avatar Last Airbender, his kind of like the wind and air looks like Sanemi's but green, and so I thought that was really cool. I am a huge fan of snakes. They're like my favorite animal, so Obanai's breathing style was amazing seeing. I loved watching the snakes go through everything. But oh my gosh, the end scene of them jumping into the Infinity Castle and just seeing hundreds of demons around. That was not in the manga, but that is a perfect thing to show, kind of like a foreshadowing thing for maybe what's to happen in the future of the anime. And something I noticed is that the demons are looking less and less humanoid. Now, the guy that they were after looked kind of like a human, but all the rest in the castle looked very like globby, lots of eyes, lots of like, just their facial and body features weren't very humanoid, kind of like falling apart. Obviously, demons aren't really the most, you know, humanoid looking, but from so far, you know, we've seen that a lot of the demons are. A lot of the lower moons and the upper moons kind of resemble humans in a way, and so I wonder if demons that are more starting to look less humanoid is also kind of a clue in to what Muzan's doing with his demons. After this lovely scene of Obanai and Sanemi, which completely just dropped my jaw in the theaters, we get a scene of Kanao and Shinobu. And Kanao tells Shinobu that she has returned, and so she's actually come back a lot sooner in the anime than she did in the manga. So Kanao actually returned in chapter 131. Right now in the anime, we're only in chapter 128. So they're kind of mixing things up in the manga to bring to the anime, but we're still seeing everything and we're seeing a bit more. So the conversation that Shinobu and Kanao actually had in the anime is a bit different than what happens in the manga, but what happens in the manga is something that we will for sure get later because it's very important for later circumstances that'll come across the road. And so this was just like a cool scene to show more connection and the bondage of Shinobu and Kanao. So finally, about 10 minutes in, we are finally getting to how the manga starts in chapter 128. So this is after the Swordsmith Village arc and starting the Hashira Training arc. So we are getting so much anime original content, like I feel so blessed, but we finally go back. We have our boy Tanjiro, and we see him absolutely just stuffing his face. We see that he's talking about Mitsuri, and you know, he's just having a good time trying to heal up. Now, all of this was in the manga. We do get a lot more flashbacks from the Swordsmith Village arc, like Nezuko, Huntengu's downfall. That wasn't necessarily in the manga, but in the manga that didn't really make much sense because the manga is much faster. It moves at a much rapid pace. So beating Hentengu and seeing Nezuko conquer the sun was just like a couple pages before. So there didn't really have to be a flashback. So after this part in the manga, it actually goes straight to Zenitsu seeing Nezuko and talking to Aoi and the 3 little girls. This part actually happened a bit later in the anime, which I'll cover in a bit, but in the anime, it goes straight to the Hashira meeting. And so this meeting was actually really cool to go back and look at the manga because everything that the Hashira say, all of their facial expressions, the way that the scenes are posed is like exactly how it was depicted in the anime. They didn't even like skip over anything that the Hashira were saying. If like Mitsuri had a line, they didn't just like skip over it, even if maybe it seemed a little useless in the manga, which I thought was cool. I'm gonna pop up some comparison pictures of the manga versus the anime. There's just something about seeing it go from like black and white in the manga to like beautiful colored animation in the anime that I just think is so cool. And so a bit into this meeting is actually when chapter 129 starts in the manga. And so this is actually where they show that mid-screen of Muitsuro and Mitsuri. That's when chapter 129 started. So like I said before, the meeting was very accurate except for a little bit of the context of the mark that Amane was talking about. So in the anime, it leaves that part off on a pretty big cliffhanger. We don't necessarily know what the mark does, why the Hashira are acting in kind of a surprised, shocked manner. In the manga, it also leaves it off on a cliffhanger, but there's a couple words that are different in the translation that I feel give you more context clues for what the mark does. And so if you're interested in that and you're interested in reading more about the mark, you can't wait to find out about that whenever it happens in the anime in the future. It's toward the end of chapter 129 during the end of their meeting. This is when the anime switches back to Zenitsu seeing Nezuko for the first time. And so this scene was all very similar. They had more visuals, of course, in the anime. In the manga, it was like 2.5 pages. So the anime really expanded on this. Something that I really liked that they added was Zenitsu's lightning. You could see like the waves of like the blue sparks like jetting out from him. And so I thought that was really cool because that's not something you see in the manga, obviously. After this, we skip to the scene of Hagenezka coming in to give Tanjiro his new sword. We see that it has Rengoku's hilt and the blade is deeper, which this was also mentioned in the manga, and we can actually visually see this in the anime that it is a deeper shade of black, which I thought was really cool in the animator's choice of colors. We then see Inosuke crashing through the window, making his grand entrance, coming through, and we see Genya, poor Genya, on the bed. He wants a different room because it's way too loud in there for him. All of this was basically the same in the manga. And this is actually when chapter 130 starts. This is when we get another clip from the Hashira meeting. Something important to note here is that Giyu is not present. So last we saw he was trying to leave, Gyome told him to stay. In the anime we see that he didn't stay. In the manga we don't get this whole interaction of the Hashira. So this part's really cool because it's talking about Gyome explaining kind of his plan for what they should do. He states that they should start a Hashira training. And all of them are totally in the loop of, yes, we should do this. We need to train our slayers to their absolute best so that we can defeat Muzan, because we know Muzan's coming for Nezuko. And so this whole scene was very important. It was kind of explained in the manga, but not really through a meeting. It was more of like those rectangular boxes that just explain kind of what's going on, but it didn't really go into depth. And it didn't tell that Giyu wasn't present. And so of course we end off on, where's Giyu? Why is he not joining? Which we will see in the next episode. This then moves on to Tanjiro and Zenitsu having their little conversation of them meeting up again. Zenitsu's a little angry, but then he's happy. All of this was spot on with the manga, even the visuals of Zenitsu's very funky looking face. Next is up to Tengen, and so this is when we get to see a lot more of Tengen. He only got like 1 page in the manga in this moment, and it was basically just him beating on all of the trainees, and then it kind of shows different parts of the other Hashira training. Now, in this part, we didn't get to see like the wives at all, Besides, they were showed in chapter 130's like title page, and so we can see that it looks like they're making food, but we don't really know what they're doing. And so in this scene in the anime, we can clearly tell that they're making food for the trainees, which is really cool. And this is something that's minorly touched on a bit later in the manga, but we'll get there later. Now, I thought this part was really cool because it was narrated by Tengen. He's explaining that all of the trainees are gonna have to go through all the Hashira in order to make it up to Gyome, which is the very top. And so as he's explaining all of this, there's images of the Hashira with a little description on kind of what their training is going to be about. All of these poses were the exact same from the manga, except for Open Eyes, which I thought was cool because in the manga, Kabarimaru, his snake, is not there, but they added him in the anime, which I think is so cute because he's a part of Open Eye. Like, why was he not in the manga? This part's also really touching and was not in the manga, but it is leaving it off to Gyome when he's talking about how much he cares for Kagaya and how we need to see this through to the end. As he's talking about we, as in all of the Hashira, all of the trainees, they need to defeat Muzan, which I thought this scene was just very touching. We haven't seen a whole ton of Gyome yet in the anime, so again, this is kind of reinforcing his character a bit more as well. Next up, we see that Tanjiro is getting a letter from the crow, and this letter is from Kagaya. And so in the anime, we see that Tanjiro is kind of summarizing what that letter says. We see that it's from Kagaya. In the manga, it doesn't really say who the letter is talking about, what the letter is, anything about it really. It just kind of leaves off, it goes to something else, and then it comes back. But when it comes back, it's actually Kagaya in bed as his sickly self talking through the letter. So it's like his words through the letter. But in the anime, instead, they show a scene of Kagaya, and instead of it talking about the letter at all, it's actually a very heartbreaking yet heartwarming scene of him and Amane. She's taking care of him and he's telling her thank you and how much he truly appreciates her from the bottom of his heart. Now this scene obviously caused me many tears. Kagaya is in my top 10 characters for being one of my favorites. So I cosplay him. I absolutely love this man. And so this was a very much needed anime original scene. He is very important to the story. So is Amane. I liked how she got her moment to shine in the meeting, and I liked how this extra scene kind of helped her character along too in reinforcing that she's helping Kagaya as best as she can. And she has all these kids still, she has all the Hashira, she has so much on her shoulders. Next in the anime is actually very interesting. This is how the episode ends. This whole scene is when the Ubuyashiki crow finds Tamayo's where she's hiding out with Yushiro, and he is trying to recruit her to come to the Hashira Manor so that she can help out with something. And so this scene actually took place a bit later in the manga. So it was in chapter 131, which is a bit further from where we're at now. And so this was a really great way to end the episode because, again, we need to defeat Muzan. That's how it ends. We're recruiting more people to help with this, and Tamayo is the best person to help this along with. I absolutely love Tamayo too. She's in my top 5 favorite characters. I loved how this ended. And so that is the end of our episode 1 of the Demon Slayer Hashira training arc to defeat Muzan Kibitsuji. And so this episode, which was around 40-ish minutes, covered about 3 chapters of manga 15. And so that's not all of this. This is just kind of what I walked through today, showing visuals, talking about it. And so I hope you enjoyed, and I'm probably going to be doing this for every episode because this was actually very fun for me to see the differences and the similarities, and also for me to see foreshadowing for what's to come. The animators are adding in so much content that's going to be more important later when you're going to realize, oh my gosh, that scene was so impactful. And so it's also creating like a lot of emotions for people who have read the manga because it's added scenes that are going to make you cry later. So good luck with that. I am now going to be moving into spoilers for Demon Slayer Manga 18 for chapter 187. So if you have not read the manga, please leave. You can come back later. I don't want to spoil you. This is a pretty huge spoiler for something that was kind of foreshadowed in this episode that not a lot of people are talking about, that I wanted to bring to people's attention. So please come back later. I'm about to spoil this book. The Taisho secret for this episode ends off with Shinobu trying to heal Inosuke. She's like, you know, you can't do that. Let me heal your hand. And Inosuke seems pretty taken aback by that. He has his little bubble moment when he's like, oh my gosh, someone's showing me kindness. What is this? We saw that in season 1. And so this moment that's happening with him breaking through the window and Shinobu trying to heal him, she takes his hand. This part is very similar to what Inosuke remembers as a memory after he finds out that Doma killed Shinobu. So in the manga, we see that Inosuke is hurt, Shinobu takes his hand and makes him a promise. And it's very sad to think that this fun Taisho secret is going to become Inosuke's first memory when he sees that Shinobu passed away. And so again, the animators know what they're doing. They're seeding in these little things that are so emotional for manga readers. This can be my Taisho secret for episode 1 of the Hashira Training arc. I hope that didn't make you cry. It made me cry. But anyway, that is the end of my episode 1 breakdown of comparing the manga with the anime for this section of Demon Slayer. And so I'm gonna keep doing this for the episodes to come. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your spoilery thoughts, but make sure that you have a spoiler warning so that we're not spoiling people who have not read the manga. I hope you enjoy the Hashira Training arc, and I will see you next time. Bye!